All right, welcome back to class. Today I'd like to start off by reviewing Hazlitt's lesson that we started last time, and I'd like to review the lesson and then do some more examples to help us understand it. It's an extremely important lesson, and if we can grasp what he's saying, it will help us as we look at other areas, other economic issues, anywhere in life. If you apply this lesson, it will put you on the right side of things. So it's very, very useful for that purpose. The lesson basically has two parts. The first part is we have to, in any economic question or situation or policy decision that's coming up, we have to make sure we look at all the groups involved. Very often, politicians are good at looking at one group and talking about how this policy or this new idea, and they point to that one group, and they don't talk about all the other people that are affected. The second thing we have to do is look at both the short and the long-term effects. They'll look at a group of people and say, because of this law, these people have a job. They don't bother running down the road 10 years and talking about the people that will lose their job or the factories that they subsidize that are now obsolete or whatever the long-term consequences are. So looking at all of the groups and looking at both the short and long-term consequences. And if we can discipline our mind enough to do that, it will help us see through lots of bad policies put forth by really both parties at this point. All right, last time we looked at some examples like the broken window, where some people have argued that the broken window, the hoodlum breaking the window, actually was beneficial to society because then there had to be money spent to replace the window. And the window maker had money that could be spent elsewhere, and it generated this economic activity. All right, so, and that's a false way to look at it. Looked at mass destruction and government spending and machinery. So we looked at some examples like that. I'd like to look at a few more today as we try to round off our thinking about Hazlitt's lesson. All right, the first one I'd like to think about today is the minimum wage. Bernie Sanders is calling for, I believe it's a raising of the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And this is trumpeted by liberals and lots of people as this great thing. But let's analyze it using Hazlitt's lesson. Let's first of all think about looking at all the groups. The group that's easy to see is the people getting the raise. They're going from 7, 25, or 8, or whatever the minimum wage happens to be to 15. Right? Easy to see the benefit. Their paychecks are bigger. They have more money to go spend. They pay their car payments, etc. We can see that benefit. If we think about other groups affected, though, we begin to see that that's not the whole picture. Another group that's fairly easy to see is the business owner. They have to pay more in wages. So some way the money is taken away from the business owner. And whatever benefit the employee gets by having the extra cash, the business owner loses because the cash was given to the employee. All right, so even just at that level, we can see this is at best just the wash, where whatever benefit one gains, another loses. All right, another group that's not always thought about, never thought about, is all the people buying the product. All right, if they're making books or cars or whatever the item is, that business owner is operating this business to make money. So as those wages go up, at a certain point, he has to begin raising the prices. And this would happen. It's very natural to happen in a business when this happens. So the consumers, everybody buying the particular product, is going to pay more. So we still have this one group of employees who are better off. The owner's worse off, and all the rest of society is worse off because these people got a wage increase. All right, those groups I think are fairly easy to see, and if we just think about all of them, we can see that this call for raising the minimum wage has that initial luster of, wow, this will be great, everybody's going to have more money. But just think about all the groups involved, and it really doesn't affect. I'm sorry, I forgot about one group that we can't ignore here. We talked about the employees getting wage increases and more money. This will, and this has happened every time, you can look at numbers to see this. Every time this happens, the business owner gets rid of employees. If he's paying more, the cost of employees is higher. So he figures out how to do with less, with fewer employees. So there's always people who lose their jobs. So So the liberals really are saying, we're going to give some of you a wage increase of $15 an hour, and the rest of you have no job. And there are always people like that. And it's the people who were the ones that liberals say they want to help the most, the poorly educated, those not as well qualified. When a business owner is figuring out who to get rid of, he doesn't take his best employee and get rid of them. He gets rid of the least productive. So that policy always creates another group of people that are unemployed because they can't produce enough to justify that $15 an hour wage. All right, so that's thinking about all the groups. You got to think they're very easily see that if we think about all of them, this call for an increase in the minimum wage really isn't a good thing. Really, the only thing that makes sense is to get the government completely out of the picture. The free market can determine wages. We don't need the government to artificially do that. So we can also, as we analyze this minimum wage issue, think about the short and long-term effects. Kind of already hit that some with prices going up. And really, in the short term, we might not see that immediately. But definitely, in the intermediate and long term, we're going to see prices going up. And if we see this everywhere, we're going to see everybody's prices going up. So just to use some round numbers, if your wage doubles and the price of all of everything you buy doubles, then you're really not any better off. All right? And that's what we've seen happen multiple times as these minimum wages keep getting increased. The employees get more money, prices go up, they're no better off. And then we have politicians saying, we've got to help these people, let's raise wages. Prices go up. And that's a never-ending cycle. So in the long term, we're going to see the prices go up and offset whatever benefit might have been gained by this minimum wage. Let me look at another example of how we can apply Hazlitt's lesson. Let's pick something from the election. Bernie Sanders is calling for free college tuition. Maybe I'm talking to the wrong crowd here when we're talking about free college tuition. And obviously students love this thing. All right, his rallies at colleges are well attended. A lot of his rallies are well attended everywhere, but students, they're screaming and yelling about this great thing of free tuition. Let's analyze it using Hazlitt's lesson. Okay, we can, I think, very easily see and hear the students who like this. They're going to get free tuition. They're going to go through college, get a degree, and go on into life and not have that student debt hanging over their head, which has become, unfortunately, just a routine part of our life. That, of course, you're going to have $40,000 or $50,000 in student debt when you get out of college. It's just part of life. They won't have that. So we can talk about how great this is. They'll be able to hit the ground running and get in a job and save money for a house, and they'll just benefit immensely from this. All right, that's just looking at the one group. Okay, if you paid attention at all, you probably very quickly can think of some other groups that are going to be affected. The free college tuition is coming from all the taxpayers. So everyone else in society that pays taxes is going to lose money. So whatever these people gain is lost elsewhere. Whatever economic gain we see here is lost elsewhere. There's other people that have mortgages that don't get paid off as quickly, or car loans that don't get paid off as quickly, or medical bills that don't get paid off as quickly, or don't buy a second car, or don't buy a new refrigerator because the government took the money and gave it to these people. All right, so anytime the government's spending money, that should be an automatic thing we think about. They're getting money, everybody else is losing it. And there's no gain there, and really there's a loss, because in the middle we have the government who doesn't make this exchange for free. All the government employees are taking their money out of this pot before it gets to them. So these people get less than is taken from those who give it. All right, so if we think about everyone else in society, this free college tuition isn't such a great thing. If it really was such a great thing, we could arrange it to where these people do it directly. We could have a private fund where anybody in society that wants to can just give money to pay for free tuition for students. But here we have the government step in and forcing a thing, and it is not good. It's not the government's role. But there's other things we can think about. We have the students getting the tuition. We have the people that are paying for the tuition, all the groups. But we can also think about some long-term consequences to this. What we're doing with free tuition is making the price of college very low, free. And it's going to increase the demand for this thing. So everybody, get out of high school, Let's go to college. Why get a job? I can go there, it's free. All right, so there's going to be all kinds of people wanting to go to college. So we're going to see swarms of people, even more than now, going to college, which is going to put pressure on the colleges to handle all of these extra students. And just like any business that all of a sudden gets swamped with business, more than they can handle, a very natural result is to raise prices. All right, so long term, we're going to see the price of college going up and up and up. We have seen that already, and that's because the government already meddling in this thing, and the government giving loans to students and other things to insulate them from the true cost. Now we're going to have a complete insulation. They won't even notice the true cost, and the price is just going to be pushed up. So we have that upward pressure, if you understand supply and demand, that upward pressure from the increase in the demand. On the other side, all of the colleges, they know that that little 18-year-old kid in class, he's not paying for this. The government is. And all of a sudden, prices go up. All right. If you go to McDonald's and you're buying yourself a meal, at least for me, you know, how hungry I am is pretty small. Right? But when somebody else is paying, then I need the fancy sandwich and the large fries and this and that, and what I want goes up. The price goes up. And here in the college world, these college, the administrations, the owners of these things, the presidents, all of a sudden they're seeing dollar signs. I don't have to figure out how much that kid can pay. I'm just going to send a bill to the government. And we're going to see prices escalate even faster. Right? So Bernie Sanders' great idea of free college would be a disaster. A disaster. Not even factoring in the students who get degrees that are completely worthless. All right, if it's free, you know, everyone's going to get a degree. Everybody's going to become, learn how to crochet or something in college. And they're going to get out of college and have nowhere to use that degree. And then we've taken money from people that are productive and squandered it in a degree that produces nothing. And that type of thing is already happening, and it would just magnify that. So Bernie Sanders, college tuition free. Crazy, bad idea, and we can easily see it if we apply Hazlitt's lesson. We don't have to understand a lot of fancy terminology or put graphs up. Just looking at all the groups, looking at the short and long-term effects, and we can see the fallacy and the problems in it. One more example. On the good side, Ted Cruz is calling for an end to all corporate welfare. There are major corporations in America that get money from the government. All right, a lot of them are energy companies. The government will give them money to help them develop certain new resources, solar energy, hydrogen or hydroelectric power, anything but coal. Subsidize them. Energy companies and others are getting these government subsidies. And Ted Cruz is wanting to get rid of it completely, all right, which makes sense. But let's analyze it using Hazlitt's lesson. So those in favor of these subsidies look at these businesses and say, wow, if we don't give these businesses some money, then they're going to go bankrupt, or at the very least have to scale back their operation. And there's going to be all these people without jobs. So if we don't subsidize them, we're going to have more unemployment. Right? Or sometimes even on the crazy end, they'll talk about, well, that product's not going to get made if we don't subsidize it. And then we won't have these very important products that nobody wants to buy because they can't keep the market afloat. So it's easy to see the businesses that might go out of business, the workers who might lose their job because the business scales back its operation. It's easy to look at them and say we need to subsidize them. Okay? But let's think about Hazlitt's lesson. All right, again, we're talking about the government spending money. So whatever we see benefited here is taken from everybody else. Right? So the workers that have jobs here and have money to spend are offset and balanced out by people here that make less money, that have to pay more in taxes, etc. All right, so we have that very easily, we can think about these people losing money so that these people can gain money. All right. If we think about some long-term effects in a free market, if a business can't keep itself afloat it needs to go out of business. It's not efficient enough to produce things that people want. And what our government does when it subsidizes these companies is that it's keeping these inefficient companies alive. Right? The money that goes to these companies, even in a free market, whatever money is flowing to them through the few people that buy it or the investors that have put money there, that money would go elsewhere and go into productive places. So instead of the government giving money to these utility companies to build windmills and things like that, we leave the money in the free market, the people that earn the money. And they put it in areas that are much, much more productive. Right? So in the long term, we're cutting back our productivity, that we're funneling the money from the most productive areas into the least productive areas. It's funny if you go back in time and think about if we had always done this, maybe the Barrel Makers Association petitioning Congress in the late 1800s to save their industry. All right, and if today we were still making wooden barrels with metal bands, if you've ever gone to an antique show or someplace, you can see some of these barrels. We look at that and say, well, it's obsolete. We'd have better ways of doing it. Okay, and then hopefully we can think, well, how do we know it was obsolete? Well, those businesses went bankrupt. They went out of business. Some better product came along, and these people could no longer continue making money at it, so they quit. We are stopping that very natural process. Okay, you can go back to those barrel-making factories and look at the employees that lost their jobs and have all the same arguments. All right, but I think it's pretty easy to see it's laughable today. But we have the same thing with more modern industries. Not quite so obvious right now that they're going to be completely obsolete, but the free market will weed that out. And by the government meddling, we're preventing that in the long-term, very good natural growth that would be there. Okay, so Hazlitt's lesson, very, very important. All the groups, short and long-term effects, and that will help us analyze these different economic situations. All right, the second thing I'd like to do today is start into discussing free enterprise and socialism. Free enterprise we're going to see as a Christian idea. Socialism is a non-Christian, or it's a pagan idea. It's completely unscriptural. It ignores basic principles in the Bible that we take for granted as Christians. But I want us to think about it as Christians and people who believe the Bible and try to come up with an understanding about why the free market is a Christian idea. And after we analyze it biblically, we will take some time and look at what is a free market system, how does it operate. We'll address some of the fallacies that are brought up, these false accusations that people level at the free market to tell us why it's no good. We will address those. That will be next class period. Today I'd like to look at just a little bit of a biblical foundation. So as we think about free market and socialism, we think about it as Christians, not just as conservatives or, this is the way it's always been done in America, or even this is the way that works the best. I mean, you can look at countries with a free market system and a social system and see very stark contrast there. And the free market countries much more successful. Even beyond that, but as Christians, as people who believe the Bible, what in the Bible pushes us to that free market system? All right, to address this, let's think about this question, or this idea with the question. Economists like to talk about how we live in a world of scarcity. Now, don't get the idea that we're going to starve to death and there's not enough water, etc. But what they mean by that is there's not enough stuff for everybody to have everything they want. Okay, I'd love to have a Porsche. There's only so many of them. I'd love to have my own island in the Caribbean with my own private jet to fly back and forth when I wanted to. I'd love to do that. But there's only so many of those. All right? So how do we decide who gets these things? Who's going to get the island in the Pacific? Who's going to get the Porsche? Who's going to get the Lamborghini? Who's going to get the 86 Camry? Who's going to get what? How do we decide that? There's a couple of possibilities, at least, and more than this, I'm sure, if we thought about it. We could just say that they go to the highest bidder. Porsche makes a new Porsche, and they say, all right, who's going to give us the most money for this? And that person gets it. We could let the government decide. For the Porsche plant produces a new Porsche, and They take it to some government agency, and they take applications from everybody that like a Porsche, and they review them, and they make a decision. Okay, do not think there that that agency is going to do this purely with unselfish motivations. No, they're going to be thinking, all right, these people, they helped me get my office. They gave me money. They need the Porsche. Or these people, I need them to help me in the fall, in the election. I'm going to give them the Porsche. They're going to have very selfish motivations, just like the free market is accused of having. That's one possibility. Let the government decide. Another possibility is just straight armed conflict. There's a new Porsche out there, and it's whoever survives the fight gets it. Everybody that likes the Porsche shows up, and they have at it, and the winner gets it. Now, we don't. It's strange to think about allotting Porsches that way, but lots of wars through history have been over stuff, land, and things like that, and who's going to get it, who's going to occupy it, who's going to live on it, who's going to get the cities, who's going to get whatever. It's been over land, who's going to get the stuff. So that's a viable option, or at least one to think about. So several ideas, or at least several possibilities about who's going to get what. There's not enough for everybody to get what they want. If there was a Porsche for everyone on the planet, there's no discussion anymore. If there was an island in the Mediterranean or in the Caribbean, either place, for everybody to have their own, no discussion anymore. I thought it'd be fun to have a $15 or $20 million yacht with my own pilot and crew to service it for me. That would be fun. If there's enough for those for everyone on the planet, there'd be no discussion. But there's not. So we've got to somehow figure out who gets what. Right. Let's look at a few verses in the Bible. Here we'll look primarily, or at least initially, at some Old Testament verses, and we'll get a couple ideas brought out here, and then we'll look at the New Testament and see some similar ideas as well. Let me tell you where we're going to end up. We're going to end up with the Bible basically saying it goes to the highest bidder. If you're selling something, if you're buying something, it's completely up to those people, and whoever's willing to pay the most gets it, up to the highest bidder. The war, hopefully there's some moral issues with killing people to take their stuff. And the government making the decision, that's socialism. That's straight socialism, is the government making all these economic decisions. All right, before we get to, that's what we're going to get to. Let's look at some ideas in the Bible that get us there. All right, the first one is something we've looked at prior to this. It's the idea that private property is a biblical idea. The idea that I can own a house, I can own a car, I can have money, I can have clothes, furniture, etc., and it's mine exclusively. I get to decide what happens to it. The class can't take a vote to decide who gets my car tonight to go to work. It's mine. I could loan it to you, but it's mine. The idea of private property is a biblical idea. We've looked at that before, even just the idea that the Bible says we shouldn't steal implies that there's something that's not mine. It's something that you own, and I want to take it for my own. So private property is a biblical idea. That in itself could be enough to undermine the socialist mindset. Really, in the socialist world, stuff belongs to the government, and they give it to you or allow you to use it. The idea of you owning it exclusively is anathema to a socialist system. But some other ideas from the Bible. If we look in Leviticus chapter 25, there's a couple of verses here that bear on this. I've kind of already hinted at it. 25 verse 14 says, "If thou sell aught to thy neighbor, or buyest aught of thy neighbor's hand." Okay, if you're selling, it's your decision. The government's not telling you when, if you're selling. And on the other hand, if you're buying, it's not the government saying, all right, it's your turn to go buy a car. You have to go do this. If you're buying, all right, both entering this thing voluntarily, a voluntary exchange. All right, so we have that. Buying and selling, voluntary, up to the seller, up to the buyer if they want. The verse continues, "You shall not oppress one another." So it's not saying here that you're out to cheat and connive and defraud people. It should be an honest exchange. A free market system really is a Christian biblical idea. If you get a group of people that they might not be Christian, but if we don't have a group of people that are at least living by basic morality as the Bible teaches it, the free market system does not work, all right, because it does assume that this exchange is going to be free. and honest. All right, so we have this free exchange, if thou sellest, if thou buyest, oppress not one another. If you look down at verse 29, see a similar thought. And if a man sell a dwelling house in a walled city, then he may redeem it within a whole year. The point there is if he sells it. It's up to him. It does give some restrictions there particular to the Jewish law, but if he sells it. Okay, so to me, that sounds a whole lot like a free market system. If you're selling something, it's up to you. You decide the price. You negotiate on your own. If you're buying something, you look at what people are offering and you decide if you want to buy it. Free market. Look down, now let's look in the New Testament at a couple places. Matthew chapter 25. We see the story of the ladies, the parable of the ladies with the oil. And we'll look in verse 9. Before this, it talks about the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps, etc. And then there's the foolish said unto the wise, give us of your oil, for our lamps are gone out. They didn't buy any oil. And here's the response of the wise in verse 9. Not so, lest there be not enough for us and you, but go ye rather to them that sell and buy for yourselves. All right. So here they didn't have enough oil. And the wise ladies who had already done this, the government didn't come in and say, this is unfair that you have more oil than them. Let's distribute this fairly. No, these ladies said, well, you can go over and buy it right there. It's up to you. Go buy it. It was up to them to buy it when they wanted. No mention here of the government coming in and equally distributing goods or things like that. Those who had bought it, it was theirs exclusively. And they pointed out to those who had not that they could have. It's right there, go buy it. So we have the idea of buying and selling voluntarily. One more thought here I think we can look at is in James chapter 4. If I can get there. In all of this discussion, we can't forget God. I mean, obviously we look in the Bible. But God is still in control as we talk about buying and selling and all this stuff as Christians. We need to remember God is there, and he says this very straightforwardly in James 4:13. Go to now, ye that say today or tomorrow we will go into such a city and continue there a year, and buy and sell and get gain. Whereas you know not what shall be on the morrow, for what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away. Now notice here, he doesn't say that they shouldn't decide to go into another city and buy and sell and get gain, but he says, you should say, if the Lord will, we shall live and do this or that. Just acknowledging that God is in control. And we are not absolute masters of our destiny. We are subject to God's will here. But even in that story, it's implied that we are going to be buying and selling of our own free will. Okay, so I think that gives us enough there to see that the Bible pushes us towards this free market system. We call it a free market system where we buy and sell at will. Again, not a cutthroat system where we are cheating and defrauding each other. It's one based on honesty and fairness, but a free market system. If I want the new Porsche, I need to be able to bring enough money to the table and beat the other bidders for me to get the new Porsche. If I want a new laptop, I've got to be willing to pay what Acer or whatever the company is demanding for their product. If I think that's too much, then I don't buy it. I don't think, hopefully, we don't think, that Acer's charging too much for their product. Let's get the government to make them give it to me for less. All right? Any thinking like that, we're heading towards a socialist mindset, and we should not do that. A free exchange of goods, buying and selling. If you buy, if you sell, defraud not. The free market system is what that sounds like. So I referenced earlier the fact that there are other arguments for a free market system. It is tremendously successful. We can look at countries with a free market system, look at a map of North and South Korea sometime. North Korea at night is dark. South Korea has lights everywhere. And it's not because it's drastically different climates or something. One is communist, one is a free market system. It's easy to see things like that give us support here. But as Christians, it's a Bible idea. Even if it was less successful, we would still say it's the Bible idea. The free market is what God supports. All right, next class period, we're going to continue our discussion of the free market and socialism. And we will look at the free market idea first, and give us a little more of a definition, more of a academic, economic definition, and discuss it some, and then look at some fallacies, some things that people point out about it that are just flat wrong. And we'll do the same thing with socialism, a non-Christian idea. Give us a definition, and there point out some fallacies about that, some things that are claimed about a social system that are just flat wrong, and point out how they are wrong. But that will be for next time. I will see you then.